So let us continue with the questions. And if you have any follow-ups or you want to add anything as we go along, please feel free to do so. So let's see what we have. Okay, question number 1, very short one. Does rebirth occur immediately after death? And this is one of those controversial questions, and people have different ideas about this. And the reason why people have different ideas is because the if you like, official view of Theravada Buddhism is that rebirth happens immediately after death. This is kind of the official Theravada Buddhist standpoint. And it comes from the Abhidhamma, and it comes from the Abhidhamma commentaries. And you have these ideas in the Abhidhamma. You have the Patisandha Vijnana and the Chutta Chitta. Chutta Chitta is like the moment you die, and the Patisandha Vijnana is that reeling straight to the next rebirth. And this is rebirth according to the Abhidhamma Pitaka, and or not Pitaka, the commentaries, I should say. And but this idea is actually slightly contradicted by what you find in the suttas. The suttas don't have this idea that rebirth happens, straight away. And this was one of those very controversial things. I don't know if you heard about. There's a famous book in the Abhidhamma called the Kata Vatu, translates as the points of controversy, and these were the controversial topics that were discussed between the various schools of early Buddhism. And the idea of rebirth is one of the topics in there discussed. And the Theravadins were on one side saying that it happens straight away, and some of the other schools were saying, no, there is an intermediate thing, an antarabhava, that is kind of between the moment you die and the moment you get reborn again. And if you read the suttas, I think, to me, it is fairly clear that there is such a thing as an intermediate state. Now, of course, that intermediate state could be called an existence anyway. Yeah, it's possible to call that an existence, in which case you can argue that rebirth happens immediately. But it seems that the way the suttas talk about this, that there is like a gap between the moment you pass away and the moment you are reborn. And one example of that from the suttas is where there's a wanderer called Vacchagotta, and he goes to the Buddha and he says to the Buddha, well, after the moment you die, but before you have been reborn, before you have taken a new body, what is it that sustains the mind or sustains consciousness at that time? Yeah, it seems to me, after you died, but before you have reborn, what sustains the mind and consciousness at that time? And the Buddha replies, it's craving that sustains consciousness at that time. And that seems to me to be a fairly unambiguous statement, that there is such a thing as a period between the time you die and you get reborn. And that is kind of the position of the Buddha in the early suttas. And does that matter? It may matter a little bit, because, and one of the reasons why it matters is because if you have this idea of whether you pass away and then you get reborn straight away, it means that the moment you die becomes very significant. Because the mind state you have then will have an immediate impact on how you get reborn. But if there is some time in between, it means that how you die actually doesn't matter all that much. The mind state you have the moment you die is not so important. What really matters is the overall karma that you have built up in the lifetime. And that karma then expresses itself in that intermediate state, and you get reborn according to your overall karma rather than to the kind of last thought moment that you have as you pass away. And that fits to me better with the sutta outlook. This idea that the last thought moment should be so important is not really something that you find in the suttas. So these little things, sometimes they have repercussions, and they kind of the whole of Buddhism develops in a certain way because of these ideas, like the whether you get reborn straight away or not. And these things actually do make a difference sometimes. Are you okay with that? Yeah, so, okay, we'll move on to the next one. Oops, many blank ones. That was very easy. That was very quick to answer those ones. More blank. Oh, yeah. Okay. I think most of these are not actually questions. They are just blank pieces of paper, which is kind of handy. You want to take those? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let us go on to the next one. Okay. He sees but does not see. Could it be interpreted as one only sees external appearances but not understand in depth the qualities and meanings, the consequences, etc.? I think it can be interpreted in many ways, and you can use these similes in many different ways, and that would be maybe one way of using that simile. Yeah, you see, but you don't see. You see something. You only see the external or the superficial thing, but you don't see it fully. And certainly that would be a way of looking at that. But I think the way it is used here, it seems to kind of be. The Buddha seems to have really answered the question what he means. Yeah, and the idea is that you. The whole idea about the holy life not lacking anything and nothing being superfluous seems to be what it is referring to in this context. But of course, you can make up these similes, and they can be used in many different ways. And there's nothing wrong with using it in this way. But I think in this context, it seems to have in my opinion, a fairly definite meaning anyway. And in other contexts, this might perhaps be a better explanation. Yeah, so that's the way I look at it. But again, there are different ways, and you please make up your own mind what you think is implied by this, because there isn't always one right answer. There can be many different answers to these things. Dear Ajahn, my 9-year-old daughter has doubts on the existence of the Buddha. Okay. Sometimes certain questions asked by her, especially in relation to karma, are replied only the Buddha knows, and she gets frustrated and angry because she can't ask the Buddha personally. Maybe she can, yeah? Tell her to read the suttas. That's the Buddha's personal advice. She also doesn't believe that anyone has Buddha nature, and we can be a Buddha one day. She feels frustrated and disheartened when that one day does not mean this instant. Hence, how or what can I say or do to keep her faith in the Buddha? Okay, well, I would say that 9 years old is still very young. Yeah, it's maybe too young to really have a proper understanding of the Buddha's teachings. You need a little bit more maturity to be able to really grasp what Buddhism is about, a bit more life experience probably. So I wouldn't be too concerned about what she thinks at that age. And I would, if I were you, just answer her to the best of your ability and then see what happens. Yeah, and it's very likely that down the line she will make up her own mind anyway. But 9 is too young to really have a deep appreciation of the meaning of life and these sort of things. At least when I was 9 years old, I had no clue what was going on. And I had to be at, maybe 16, 17, 18. That's when you start to have a bit more grasp of things. Yeah. If she wants to ask questions, maybe you can bring her to see some monk or monastic, someone who knows more, and you can tell them, ask this person, maybe they know what is going on, and see what happens. Maybe when Ajahn Brahm comes, you can ask her to come and see Ajahn Brahma. Yeah, Ajahn Brahm is very, very nice and friendly, and then he will tell her a few jokes at the same time, and she probably won't get so frustrated after that. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, and I would just allow things to kind of happen slowly, and allow her to have fun, a little bit fun with Buddhism. It's good to have fun with Buddhism. It's good to make her understand. I think one of the most important things is to make people understand that Buddhism actually enhances life and it makes life better, and it can be fun to be a Buddhist. It's supposed to be good, happiness. So make her do some happy things so that she associates the Buddha's teachings with happiness. And if you associate with happiness, then it is very likely that you will become a long-term Buddhist because of that. I think one of the one of the sad things that sometimes happens when people become Buddhists and they start doing some of these meditation techniques that are very demanding on the body, and you feel lots of pain and discomfort, and you never want to do meditation in the rest of your life once you have tried it once. Now the disadvantage of that is that it turns people off Buddhism. What's the point of being a Buddhist if all it does is lead to pain and suffering and problems? We come to Buddhism to get rid of pain. That's the whole point. The truth of dukkha, and then the truth of getting rid of dukkha. We don't come here to get more dukkha. Life is difficult enough as it is. We don't need to add to those difficulties. So make her associate Buddhism with something that is happy. Make her do things she enjoys. Then it will become far better as a consequence. And sometimes people have this idea that no pain, no gain. So the more when you have a lot of pain on meditation retreats, it means that you will gain a lot, as a consequence of that. But that is not how the Buddha explained meditation practice or the path. It is not about maximizing the pain to maximize long-term happiness. Not really. The Buddha's path is more about when you have the right kind of happiness, that leads to more happiness. Isn't that a good deal? Such a good deal, The right kind of happiness leads to more happiness. So you just have to tap into the right kind of happiness, and then woof, you're on the highway to enlightenment. It's happiness upon happiness upon happiness. That is the real Buddhist path. Not happiness upon dukkha or dukkha upon happiness. That's the wrong path. One of the things that we will come to later on this retreat is where the Buddha talks to the, what's he called? His name is Bodhikumara, is that what his name is? The Prince Bodhi. And when he speaks to Prince Bodhi says to the Buddha, well, happiness can only be had through suffering. It's such a common view in the world, right? Everybody thinks that. You have to torture the body a little bit, and when you torture the body, you release the soul, or you release the mind. The sinful body gets put to one side, and then you release the beautiful soul on the other side. First of all, we don't have souls in Buddhism, so you don't have to worry so much about that. But the Buddha replies to Prince Bodhikumara. He says to him that, actually, no, it doesn't work like that. I too thought that before I was enlightened, and only through suffering to gain happiness. It was a wrong view. It is the view of the Jains, the view of these people of other religions. It is not the Buddhist view. In Buddhism, you have to define happiness in the right way. Put aside the wrong kind of happiness, but build up the right kind of happiness. And when you build up the right kind of happiness, that becomes the source of even more happiness. So you have to know what happiness to pursue, and you have to pursue that. And the kind of happiness we want to pursue in Buddhism is a happiness that comes from kindness. You feel good about yourself. You feel happy inside. That is the happiness that then gives rise to more happiness in meditation. In meditation, we should try to get rid of the body, because the body is basically a hindrance in meditation practice. And the way to get rid of the body is not to produce pain, nor is it to produce pleasure, because pleasure too you get attached to. It is to have a neutral body which neither has pain nor pleasure, and then that body, it disappears because it is meaningless. If there is no pain there, no pleasure there, it is meaningless to us. It disappears, and that is where meditation can happen as a consequence. So these are the very significant and important things in Buddhist teachings, the idea of enjoying this practice, making it something that contributes to our quality of life. Too many Buddhists, they use meditation to make life worse. But in my experience, people have enough problems. Is anyone here who hasn't got enough problems already? Anyone who would like some more? It's very rare, You want more problems. Usually people won't get rid of problems, not add to it. So be careful. And then your daughter will become, I think, she'll become a very good Buddhist if she enjoys it, if she associates it with something happy. And if you can't answer all the questions, that's okay. That's a chance for you to learn. So maybe you can ask these questions on this retreat, and then you can go back to your daughter and say, yay, I got the answers. And she will say, yeah, really, wow. And then you tell her, and then she becomes happy maybe. Try that, see what happens. Okay. Let's go on to the next one here. Ajahn, referring to the Kalyanamitta, that it's the whole for the monastics, as they don't have a mother and father to take care for them, and not so much as lay people. Thank you. Not really. It is the whole of the holy life. Whether you have someone to care for you, that's not really the point. It's not about caring for you, because the Buddha doesn't really care for you. The Buddha just shows you the way. Yeah, the Buddha shows you the spiritual way. That is what matters. So the Buddha is there to show you the path, and your mother and father can't really show you the path. Usually they show you the wrong path. The mother and father say, "Oh no, don't become a monk or a nun. That's the last thing you should do. Work hard, make money, have a nice family. That is the right way." They block you. They're not karanimitta at all. They stop you. They are I shouldn't say papamitta. That is bad. But often your parents are not the right people to ask very often about what is right, because they are deluded just like us. They are also trapped in this world, unless your parents is an arahant. If you have arahant parents, then it's okay, then you listen to them. If they're not arahants, then be more careful. So that would be cool, wouldn't it, to have parents who are arahants? So you get born, and then your parents become monastics, and you have one monk and one nun, and each one they're arahants. That would be very nice. But usually it's not like that. So this is unusual. So don't think that is actually the wrong way to think about this. Remember, the spiritual insight comes from the Buddha, and that is why the Buddha is the Kalyanamitta. Parents have a different kind of care, and the Buddha has one care. The parents have a different kind of care. And so it is true, equally true for lay people as it is for monastics. In some ways, it is perhaps more true even for lay people sometimes. As a lay person, you are more distracted. You spend more time doing worldly things. Every day is more busy for you, and you lose the path more easily than a monastic does. As a monastics, I'm always surrounded by other monastics. Whenever I see a monastic, I know I'm a monastic myself, because I can, and they always do things that are, not always, but usually do things that are related to the path, to the Eightfold Path. So I see them, and I know that, what I have to do, and they kind of support you because of that. So it is, in one way, it is much easier to be a monastic and practice Buddhism than it is for a layperson, because you always have a supporting framework around you that you lack as a lay Buddhist in the same way. So please do not underestimate the importance of the Kalyanamitta. It is just as much 100% for lay people as it is for 100% for monastics. Okay, dear Ajahn, kindly clarify on the following. So then, Samyutta Nikaya, the one on archery here. Whenever one has confidence, what does confidence mind mean? The word is pasidati, and pasidati means one thing is kind of confidence, faith, having a kind of serenity, where you feel peaceful and calm. It can also mean something like inspiration. So it has all of these meanings. When you do something, you feel good about it. You feel, wow, it is so nice to give here. You feel your mind is moving to a more positive state. So confidence here means where you feel natural, you want to give, and you feel good about yourself. Pasidati is a positive state of mind. You feel the positive result of the giving. Pasidati. It is related to the word pasada, which also means confidence. You see someone who is pasadika, it means that they act in a way that gives confidence to other people because of the way they act, the way they live their life. So you feel a positive mental state. So when you feel someone is really sick, or they have a very difficult time, and you feel compassion towards them, and you feel really good about giving to them. That is kind of pasidati, or can be, maybe not necessarily always, but it can be. The next sutta on the jatilas, the fire ascetics, last paragraph. These venerables are my spies, uncover agents. What is the meaning of this paragraph? Okay. The meaning, let's just bring it up here again so that I know what I'm talking about. So the meaning is just that it's almost as if the king is testing the Buddha, because he's saying, "Oh, these are arahants, and these are, look at all these wonderful monks. They must be arahants." And then it's to check out, see what the Buddha says about that. Will the Buddha say yes, they are arahants, or will the Buddha say something else? And then towards the very end, he divulges that actually they were just his spies. He knew all along they weren't arahants, they were just his men. They were kind of dressed up like wanderers, pretending to be wanderers, but actually they were not. So it's almost as if the king is testing the Buddha here to see what the Buddha will say. He's setting it all up, and then to get an answer from the Buddha. And of course the Buddha gets it right. The Buddha says, well, actually, you don't really know. You don't have the insight to know who arahants are. And then the king is very pleased because he understands that the Buddha has actually given an answer that fits, not just some kind of silly answer about, they are all arahants or whatever. So that seems to be the meaning there. So it is, and you can perhaps imagine these sort of things happening. Kings are very powerful. They do things to kind of test out their spiritual teachers. This is kind of... So I'm not saying that I would recommend you to do it, but So that is the sort of I think that is probably the meaning in that particular case. Okay. Next one. Dear Ajahn, is it true that layperson can also achieve nibbana? Is it true? Yes, it is true. Achieving nibbana. First of all, what does it mean to achieve nibbana? And there are many different levels of awakening or enlightenment, and it comes in different stages. And the first one is like stream entry, when you see the Dhamma for the first time, and that is really good enough, because once you become a stream entry, you are bound for awakening. There's no going back anymore. And certainly in the suttas there are many lay people who attain this, but it is not easy. It is not as if I wouldn't. Just because you can do it as a layperson doesn't mean that a lay situation is the best possible situation to be in. Actually, it is far better as a monastic. Even then, it is difficult enough. But the Buddha laid down the monastic life for a reason, because it was the ideal situation for achieving this kind of thing. That's why he laid it down. But one of the interesting things the Buddha says about nibbana, he says that with every step forward on the path, especially when you come to samadhi, you come to the jhanas and all of these things, you are already approaching nibbana a little bit. All of these things are called nibbana to that extent. Because remember, the word nibbana means extinguishment. What are we extinguishing? Well, the main thing we are extinguishing is defilements in the mind. So, and suffering, of course, is part of that. So if you attain a deep state of samadhi, like a jhana state, that is also called nibbana to that extent, because you have extinguished a lot of problems. It's temporary, but nevertheless, it is a step in the right direction. So in that sense, everyone is kind of, attaining a little bit of nibbana every time we go into a deep state of meditation. But really, what you should be looking at, first of all, you should remember the ideal way of becoming a stream entry or even attaining samadhi is to be a monastic. That's the ideal way. The number of lay people who become stream entries, I think, is very small. Sometimes I hear about these meditation methods whereby they tell you that you become a stream entry, and I tend to be quite skeptical about those things. I've had so many situations of people coming to me and saying to me, "Oh yeah, I was told I was a stream entry." I don't believe it. If you don't believe it, there's no way you became a stream entry. Absolutely impossible. It's absolutely no chance. And it's kind of strange if the teacher tells you you become a stream entry, but you don't believe it. Isn't that quite kind of strange? You wonder what's going on in those kind of situations. And that after hearing too many stories like that, I become very skeptical of this whole thing when someone tells you that you are a stream entry. Actually, it turns out probably they haven't got a clue. They don't know what they're talking about, and it's just complete chaos. They're following some kind of system laid down by some kind of teacher in the past, and that whenever someone tells you of a certain state, okay, that means you are a stream entry, but it's incredibly unreliable, and it doesn't really work. So generally speaking, it is not. These things are are obviously very profound. That's the whole point of these things, that they are very profound, and they happen with difficulty. And for that reason, it is obviously very, very useful to be a monastic. That's why the Buddha laid down the monastic path. But don't worry too much about those things. If we think too much about where we want to go, if you think too much about, getting at a certain state or whatever, it actually often hinders our practice because you get too much craving, too much desire. I want to go there. Don't worry about that. What you should worry about is whether you are improving. That is what matters. Ask yourself where you are this year compared to where you were last year or 6 months ago. What are you now compared to 5 years ago? And it's the general state of mind that matters. Are you generally more caring, more kind, more peaceful, more mindful, less angry, less desirous, more clear-headed person? Yeah, if your good qualities are going up and your bad qualities are going down, and you know that from your general feeling about yourself, then you know that everything is going well. If all you're looking out for is like a peak experience in meditation, bang, whoa, that is so cool, but then your ordinary self is exactly the same, you're not really going anywhere. It is your general feeling, your general personality and habit and character, that is what should get purified. Then you are on the right track. That's all you should worry about. And if you keep doing that, then all of these other things will happen eventually as a consequence. So that is the way that the Buddha, and now I'm just referring to what the Buddha says in the suttas, that is how he says that we should practice. And every decision you make in your life about how to live, what to do, or whatever, should be done on that basis. And then you are on the right track. Okay. Dear Ajahn, a moment of last thought. Is our last thought is animal, e.g. dog? Is it the time we will be reborn as a dog? Last thought doesn't matter so much. That's one of the things I was saying before. It is not really so much about the last thought that matters. What matters more is your general development of your mind. So if you generally develop the dog mind, then you have a problem. So if you feel a bit like a dog now, then it's going to be problematic for you. And this is interesting because the sutta I mentioned before today, I was talking about the dog ascetic and the dog duty and the ox duty ascetic. And these two ascetics, they go to the Buddha and they say to the Buddha, "Oh, Master Gautama, we are these ascetics. What will be our rebirth?" They must have had a lot of confidence in the Buddha because they weren't Buddhist, obviously. What is going to be our rebirth if we carry on like this? And the Buddha said, "Don't ask. Please don't ask. No, that is a no. No, we want to know. We want to know." Buddha says, "Don't ask." "No, we want to know." Okay, after 3 times, the Buddha says, "Okay, I will tell you. Well, if you practice this ascetic, either you go to hell if it goes rightly, or you get reborn as a dog." And then he starts crying. No, crying. And the Buddha says, "I told you not to ask this question." That's what it says. There you are. I told you it's going to be bad news for you. And then he says, "Oh, that's not why I'm crying. I'm crying because, now thankfully I can give it up," or something like that. So it was a good ending. Yeah, they stopped being dog duty ascetics and ox duty ascetics, which is a good thing from a Buddhist point of view. But that is what happens. Yeah, if you do. The idea is if you do develop successfully the dog mind, you try to think like a dog and act like a dog or whatever, you become a dog. Yeah. So it's kind of silly. It doesn't actually lead to anything positive. They thought you get reborn in heaven this way. No, actually, you get reborn as a dog instead. So don't do that. Don't crawl around on 4. I don't think that you're going to do that, but so that is the wrong way. So develop the bright mind, the positive mind, the joyful mind, the kind mind, and these things will always take you in the right direction. And don't be too concerned about being reborn as a deva or anything like that. Yeah, it's not bad to be reborn as a deva. People say, "Oh, I want to be reborn as a human so I can continue the practice." Well, who says you can't continue the practice as a deva, but just be a little bit more happy here? Yeah, so don't worry too much about those things. You try to control these things, often you end up messing it up instead. So just allow things to take their course and trust that things will go in the right way. And then if you do the right thing, they will generally go the right way as a consequence. It's interesting, the Buddha never says anywhere in the suttas that you should aim to become a human being. He doesn't say you should really aim for anything in particular when you die. He just says that you do your best so you get reborn in a good destination. That's really all he says in the suttas. So this is a later idea. I'm not sure where it comes from, maybe from Tibetan Buddhism or something like that, but it's not actually found in the suttas. Anyone know where that idea comes from? The idea that, because lots of Buddhists go around saying that, I want to get reborn as a human being. Where does this idea come from? Anyone knows? Najib. Who said that? So, okay. Is it? Where in the Abhidhamma? You're not sure? Yeah? Maybe it's possible that it comes from some of the commentaries in the Abhidhamma, possibly. Not from the Abhidhamma Pitaka, because the Abhidhamma Pitaka is very dry. It doesn't have such interesting details. But sorry? Yeah, please. So I think that's all the questions I had. So please ask. Yeah, go for it.
Ajahn,
Yeah.
I was told by a friend of mine that her teacher told her that to attain stream enterer, there is a Sotapanna, they did not have to practice meditation, only study the sutta, understand the sutta taught by the teacher, and they can attain Sotapanna level. What is your comment on that?
My comment is that you have the thing is that you have to have samadhi to become a stream enterer. Yeah.
But they don't have to practice meditation. Just study the sutta under the teacher. That's all.
Yeah. The sutta says you have to have samadhi. So maybe if you read the sutta, if you get samadhi from reading the sutta, if you get that, then you don't actually have to practice meditation. But you need samadhi, and this is a very standard thing that you find in the suttas. You find it almost everywhere, this idea that from samadhi comes yata bhuta jnanadasana. Yata bhuta jnanadasana is seeing things as they really are, and stream entry is precisely seeing things as they really are. So samadhi is an absolute requirement to become stream entry. You can't do it without that.
Yes, correct.
So, and usually samadhi means meditation practice. Yeah? It doesn't mean sutta reading doesn't normally give you samadhi. Sometimes there is some indication that you listen to a sutta and then you get so much happiness and joy and then you go into samadhi. But there is some degree of meditation usually going on there, even in that situation. You use the sutta reading as your foundation and then you go into samadhi as a consequence of that. But this is a kind of standard theme in the suttas almost everywhere, that samadhi is the cause for seeing things according to reality. So you need samadhi. I'm sure, obviously I don't know what the teacher said, but as long as samadhi is there, then there's no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yes, please.
Ajahn, it's relation to what my sister talked about. Maybe the teacher is referring that there's no need to have jhanas.
Okay.
To achieve sotapanna. But a certain level of meditation is required to achieve deep concentration. So that when you read the Dhamma or the Sutta, you have better clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. Reading the suttas is so important, because reading the suttas gives you the right view, it gives you so many things. And one of the things about reading the suttas, which is so powerful, is that it is also a dhammanusati. And dhammanusati is a recollection of the Dhamma. And if you do that in the right way, it gives rise to joy. And if you give rise to joy, then joy is piti in Pali. Piti gives rise to pasadi. Pasadi gives rise to sukha. Sukha gives rise to samadhi. Samadhi gives rise to yata bhuta jnanadasana. So reading the suttas can be a foundation for this whole process. And that's why, in a sense, it is what the teacher is saying is not entirely wrong. Yeah, it can be right. But usually you don't achieve sufficient samadhi just by reading the sutta. You have to let go as well and then go into yourself, because samadhi is an inner state. If you are focusing on the sutta, you can't go far enough inside really to be able to give rise to proper samadhi. So it can be the foundation, but not the full story. As for whether jhana is required or not, I think the suttas aren't 100% clear about that. But when the Buddha talks about samadhi, the most important aspect of samadhi in the suttas is jhanas. Yeah? So when the Buddha says samadhi is necessary for seeing things according to reality, usually what that means is that jhanas are required for that, because samadhi is by far the most important type of samadhi in the suttas. So it is not 100% certain, but it is fairly, to me, I think it is the most obvious path to go is to go via jhanas and then go to stream entry as a consequence. Yeah. Yes?
Ajahn, now there's a growing trend, especially in, I think you can read all about in Thailand, and also US, I think they're talking all about mindfulness only. So how much can you go with mindfulness without doing the jhanas?
You can. What you can do with mindfulness is that you can purify yourself. So the purpose. Yeah, exactly. So this is. But remember, the mindfulness movement that you have in places like the United States is not really a Buddhist movement. It is a secular movement, and the purpose is not to achieve anything like we are achieving. The purpose is just to improve people's life a little bit, yeah? To be a little bit more aware, to have a little bit more emotional problems and all that, and that is valuable in its own right. I don't want to say anything bad about that. It's valuable in its own right, but the purpose is not, deep meditation practice or wisdom and all of that. So in Buddhism, the main purpose of mindfulness is to purify yourself. So mindfulness can take you a long way in the sense that it can make you a more ethical, a better person. Even just to be kind, you need to be mindful. You need to be mindful of your actions and your speech and all of that. To be kind in the way you think, you need even more mindfulness, yeah, to be able to kind of shift the way you think and to learn how to get less angry and to have more metta and all of these things. All of this requires a fairly high degree of mindfulness. And that is what mindfulness does to you. And then mindfulness, when it really starts to take off, mindfulness, the Satipatthana practices, that is like breath meditation, the Satipatthana practice. So you stay with the breath. So mindfulness in daily life then becomes mindfulness in meditation, and then that mindfulness in meditation becomes samadhi states. So the mindfulness in daily life is very, very important as a foundation for the rest of the path, because it is what helps you to purify yourself. And too often people do the wrong thing, and they start to do meditation practice without actually doing the purifying themselves first. And if you don't purify yourself first, the meditation is very often, it stops, it doesn't take you anywhere. So you need that daily life practice for a long time before you even sit down and you try to meditate properly. Yes, Venerable. Yeah, that's what it says. It says that you can base full awakening on the first jhana. That's what it says. Yeah, if you go to, first one is enough. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Yes, the first one is enough in theory, but the more you have, the more powerful you are, and the more ready you are for the practice, for the insight. That's exactly right.
On the end 29, I read the whole sutta, and there's two shocking things about it that I learned from there. First thing is that the Buddha said not to praise someone who is following the teachings of someone who is not fully enlightened, because that teaching doesn't lead to nibbana. To praise that someone to be following well of that teaching would be generating bad karma. if someone is not following well the wrong teachings, you praise them for not following well. That's generating good karma.
Sorry, can you say that last thing again?
Praising them well for not following the wrong teachings is generating good karma, because the disciples have merits not to follow the wrong teachings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, very interesting. I agree with. Yeah.
But it seems like a lot of Dhamma speakers in interreligious settings, kind of maybe that is that we have to have boundaries. It seems, instead of like praising someone, oh, you're a good Christian, we should not do that. Instead, but saying that instead we just talking about Buddhism, then we should not praise someone being good at their what other religion they are.
I think it depends on the circumstance. Yeah, it depends on the situation. Sometimes, if someone has a different religion, then very often there isn't much scope for saying anything, because they are stuck in their views, they have their ideas, and you cannot really change that. If someone believes in God, usually it's a very strong view, and it's very hard to kind of get them to see otherwise. So sometimes all you can really do sometimes is at least we can be friends rather than be enemies. So I think in that kind of situation, it depends on how open the other person is to understand. They often have to be willing to listen, for example. Yes, you have to feel out the situation. I don't think these things are often always bound up with a degree of wisdom on whether something can be done or not that is useful. And it's not just doing something in all situations is always right. It depends on the circumstances. So I would say, if someone is really interested and they ask you, then it is good to dispraise someone who gives the wrong teaching. Yeah, but you have to know that the other person is open for that. If you do that to people who are not open, then you just create problems for no reason, for no purpose.
Because I also heard that some Buddhist teachers are encouraging people of the faiths to learn Buddhism to be better in their other faiths.
Okay. Well, maybe that is a skillful mean. Maybe some of those, once they learn Buddhism, they will realize that actually Buddhism is better. They become Buddhist. Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. So there can be a skillful mean in kind of slowly getting them over to become Buddhists. Because there's something about the Buddhist teaching was very powerful. If they are ready, they may actually accept that. They may say, "Yeah, actually, I'm a Buddhist." We have a follower in Perth who used to be a Muslim, and he was born in a Muslim country, but he knew in his heart, first time he heard the Buddhist teaching, he was actually Buddhist. He wasn't a Muslim at all. But that caused a lot of troubles for him, because that is a no-no where he came from to say that I'm actually Buddhist, not a Muslim. I think this often happens. I remember one of the early pioneers of Buddhist studies was Thomas Rhys Davies. He was one of the big translators in the early years. You know Thomas Rhys Davies? Yeah, one of the early translators. And he was a Christian initially, until he started reading the Sutta. I said, these are better. This is better. Yeah, Christianity is nothing compared to this. This is far better. So he didn't call himself a Buddhist, but basically he was a Buddhist as a consequence of reading the Buddhist teachings. So, and I think that is kind of maybe the hope of these people. Yeah, I use our teachings, and people tend to be confident that they won't move or change, so they'll do that. Some won't, some will. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
So the second thing is that the Buddha said some people believe that the self and cosmos are not eternal, none, etc. All the four possibilities, and pain and pleasure are eternal, not eternal, both neither. And he does not acknowledge these views. So it's quite a bit different from what most people would interpret. Everything is impermanent, to not naturally say that self, cosmos, pain, pleasure are also not eternal. But the contradiction is that Buddha even don't acknowledge that views.
Acknowledge those views. Okay, I'm not 100% with you now. So you're saying that the Buddha says pain and pleasure are not permanent? No?
I mean, he doesn't acknowledge the views that pain and pleasure are eternal, not eternal, both or neither. Then he just declared about being mindful to see things as they truly are. That
Yeah.
kind of thing. The teachings are how to see things as they truly are, instead of holding on to any views.
Yeah. Okay, I don't quite get your question, but
it's in the Sutta, DN 29.
is it? Okay. I'll have a look at it later on, and then I can maybe. I'm getting a bit tired now as well, so I'm kind of fading out a little bit. So yeah. Okay. Is there anything else anyone would like to ask? Yes, sir.
Ajahn, what is the significance of telling the children about Buddha taking the first 7 steps after 7 days from the day he was born? Why do we keep telling this over and over and over again? And then there will be 7 lotuses as every step. So why?
Yeah, why do we keep... it's a good question. I'm not sure if we should be telling the children these kind of things, because I'm not sure if it is all that helpful, to be honest. The reason we keep saying this is because it is in one of the suttas. It is that was the sutta I mentioned before today, Majjhima Nikaya 123, the wonderful and marvelous suttas, which is all about the things that happened around the birth of the Buddha. And it says in there that after the Buddha was born, he took 7 steps and he declared, I am the best, I am the foremost, this is my last birth. So there he seems to know already it's going to be his last birth. But later on, he doesn't know that. He must have forgotten about that, because later on he's striving for awakening. So that sutta, in my opinion, is not worthy of so much attention, because it is much more, to me, mythology and legend than actually of real Buddhist interest, as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know. If I were a Buddhist teacher, I wouldn't teach the children these kind of things, because I'm not sure how useful it is, to be honest.
Yeah, because children nowadays are losing interest, because the stories are keep repeating over. From the time when I learn and now when my kids learn, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So my kid asks me, why?
Why? Yeah.
Why? And it's not logical, because they know science now.
Yeah.
A baby doesn't take 7 days to walk. So how do I explain to her?
Tell them it's just a story. It's a story. Sometimes we tell stories that religion is a mixture of truth and a mixture of truth and stories. And sometimes you have to be able to distinguish between what was the real life of the Buddha and what are the stories that were made up around it. The purpose of the stories is just to kind of make a point that the Buddha was special, but you shouldn't take them literally. So try to kind of guide them in roughly the right direction.
I see. The second question is, just now you said, we are our own enemy when we act out of anger. So how does one discipline our children? If, let's say, they start talking back and being rude, because out of anger we will naturally scold and discipline. So how do you reconcile that?
Well, don't be too perfectionist, because sometimes most people get angry sometimes, and it's very hard to be perfect parent and never get angry. It's really difficult. I don't even know. I've never been a parent, but I don't know. But I assume it is very hard. And so don't be too concerned if sometimes you get a bit upset and angry with your children. I think it's natural. I think it's very hard to avoid that. But instead, ask yourself if there's another way you can discipline them without getting angry. Yeah, see if you, instead of you can be a bit firm. Being firm is different from being angry. Yeah, so you can tell them, please don't do this, because this creates problems. Yeah, it creates problems in the family. And if you please don't talk back, because I'm just trying my very best to kind of do what is right. Please don't. I don't have time to kind of argue with you about this, because I'm doing whatever else you're doing. So please just follow what I say. And try to explain to them in a way that is kind of logical. Why talking back? There is a time maybe to talk back. There's a time to have a discussion. There's also time just to follow what your parents say. And just let them know that. Let's have a discussion. Once a week we sit down talking about things. The rest of the time you just follow what I say. Something like that. Because tell them that life is just too complicated otherwise. It's too difficult to have an argument about everything and discussion about everything. So, very often we get angry. The reason we get angry very often is because, for all kind of other reasons, not because that, we get angry because we are a little bit stressed ourselves, too many things have been in the end, if you look at what is the best possible outcome for the child and what is the most likely way to get them to listen, usually anger is not. They would have short-term effects, but long-term it doesn't work as a strategy. In the long term, to get a child to listen, you have to have the child to respect you, and the way to get the most respect is usually to show kindness, to show that you are a strong person who can deal with these kind of things out of kindness, out of equanimity, with a strong mind, a cool person, who just gets respect in a natural way. That's the ideal way of doing things.
It's difficult.
It's difficult. So,
Thank you.
Go gradually, and see what happens. Good luck. Okay. I'm not an expert on bringing up children, I'm probably the last person should ask. But okay, good. So great. Let's stop there because otherwise I will fade out. So let's pay respect to the